I'm delighted to welcome Sir George Trevelyan, who's going to talk on the way forward into the millennium. Sir George.
Well now, dear people, this is just what I love doing. The getting together of a group of more or less young people of your generation, which I do not belong to because I'm 84. And in order to talk about what's really happening now. Discussing with a lady over the telephone about a lecture, she said, well, what do you want to call it? I found myself saying, well, I couldn't think immediately. I said, well, you see, I want to talk about what really is happening now. And then we saw what a dash good title that was. What really is happening now? What really is happening now? What really is happening now? What's really happening now? Finally, what's really happening now? So, this is what it's about. I did look up what the title was, but I've forgotten it again. It doesn't matter.
Do you want me to say it?
You say it.
Into the millennium with courage and joy.
Into the millennium with courage and joy. Good. Now, the first thing that your generation must see, I flatter you now, is that you are probably the most important generation in human history. That's rather a big remark. I try to make that one good. You're certainly one of the most exciting. And what you may be absolutely sure of is that it won't go on just as it is for the next 10, 20 years, quietly and happily until middle-aged. That's not going to happen. The second thing is that we are called on not fear. Will you do that? Expunge fear out of your thinking. That doesn't mean you know what's going to happen, but that if you allow your personality, the soul, call what you will, to be filled, to be your attitudes to be built on fear, you are going to miss the vital things that are happening. If you hold only a materialistic, essentially materialistic view, you think that matter is the only reality, then, rightly, if you're awake and thinking, you can feel the prospects are pretty grave. Where the hell shall I be in 10 years' time? What's happening to the world? It's running downhill into all sorts of changes. Earth changes, change in the earth itself, possible rising of the sea, earthquakes, possible ice age, all sorts of things can happen to the earth, which at first sight could be frightening. The marching orders are that you expunge fear. That's the first point. Secondly, you've got to grasp a certain world view. Now here let me make it quite clear that I am not asking anyone to believe anything. I mean by that this New Age movement is not, repeat, a proselytizing, semi-religious movement saying this is what you ought to believe. There are lots of those, ones who think they've got the truth and are saying, I've got the truth and you must believe this. A good many pseudo-religious movements try to do that, impose belief. the attitude is different. There's no question, anything that I say, I'm not asking you to believe it. I don't care a damn if you don't swallow it. I'm not concerned. I am inviting you to think, which is quite different. We are invited to explore ideas, not believe dogmas. This is quite different. And therefore, any ideas that I throw out, you're perfectly free to reject. I shan't argue, I don't mind, I don't care a damn. But I'm excited by the ideas. Now, let's explore a little then. Idea one, in our very materialistic age, the thing in you and me that looks out of our eyes and can say, I am, is a divine spiritual being, a droplet of divinity. Divinity, what we call God, for lack of any other name, is life. Life is God. That's an idea. I wouldn't argue about it, but to me it's terrific. Where you apprehend life, that is God. I apprehend life in each of you as I look into your eyes. A little bit of God, a little droplet of God. And furthermore, a wonderful thought, as I look at you, a little bit of God in me is looking at a little bit of God in you through the gateway, the window of the eye. And in a sense, the thing in me is asking, well, hello, what's happened to you since we met last? Was it in Atlantis? Or was it ancient Egypt? Lovely to meet you again. How are you? How's it getting on? We're both a bit of the same. Now, if once I thought that, having looked at you like that, I could not hurt you, insult you, bully you, rob you, murder you, or any of those jolly things people do. One couldn't do it, because I know that you and I are part of the same divinity, two different consciousnesses in the same great being. So that to begin with, we are gathered in this room today, all these divine droplets on an extraordinary adventure. And we're all recognizing that we are part of a great whole, to quote Alexander Pope, the poet, all are but parts of one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and God the soul. Now, this body then, we are each of us a spiritual being, immortal, imperishable. How can life die? Life can't die. The vehicle holding life down here can die. Your body, my body, can certainly break down and die in all sorts of ways. But that will only release the God in you, the immortal part in you, to lift again out of this physical world, bound up with time, into a timeless world, to a world of spirit. A world you enter in sleep, you touch in meditation, and you don't definitely transfer to after what is called death, which word ought to be expunged from our language because it's really a release into life. We got death all wrong, but that's another subject to talk on. So that you have, not are, you have a physical body, the vehicle, which slows you down because you're really a spiritual being who can move in that realm of higher thought at the speed of thought. If you want now to be in Edinburgh or Iceland, the moment you think to it, you are there. Well, now, it's quite a different thing to try to carry on relationships on that level, when also, obviously, as a spiritual being, we merge, we literally merge into each other and through each other. Totally different relationship. And then you see that we're being slow. Now, these two things, your legs, are not really for walking with. Up on that plane, you can get around simply by thought. You are where you project attention. But they are necessary to slow you down and enable you to move about at a controlled pace in the heavy density of matter. Come along in and sit in that chair. So, as I said earlier, I want you to think these ideas, and I'm not concerned whether you believe them. I'm not out to believe them. If you like them, I invite you to think them and live with them. And this one, in which I say that you really are a divine droplet, immortal, imperishable, in a body that is perishable. Well, if that is not exciting, then you are, frankly, a very dull dog. Which I wouldn't believe when I look at you and I know the reputation of this place and all. We are none of us dull dogs, and we're on the most extraordinary adventure that man has ever engaged in, and we are on the fringe of extraordinary changes that are going to shake us, which may come quite soon, in the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years. Don't be under any illusion that life is just going to go nicely on as it is now, because it isn't. But remember, thought one was that you are called on to cut out fear. If you allow fear to get hold of you, you will stymie the possibility of really going with the changes that are going to come. You're going to get bound down in difficulties. I must catch a sweet little story. In one lecture of mine in Norwich, I think, there was a little girl sitting on the front row there, age 6. And she solemnly listened from 10 in the morning till lunch. She came back at 2:30, listened again till 4:30. When she got home, she said to her mother, "Mummy, you know, Sir George does say quite a lot that's true, but he's wrong. When he says I'm a tiny little droplet of God, I'm not a tiny little droplet of God. I'm a great, great big droplet." Now, do you see, at that age, the little child is still seeing the great truth that humanity is really one enormous, is bubble the right word, one enormous self of consciousness with infinite number of droplets. And each droplet going through the experience of coming down to earth and of necessity taking on this very beautiful temple, beautifully designed mobile temple. Perishable, of course, but you are imperishable. Now, a little girl that got that thought, and still at the age of 6, she was able to be more conscious of the huge self with a capital S of humanity than we who've settled into a heavy body and you think you're you and that I'm me. Not at all. We're all part of the same oneness, but a point of consciousness in each of it. There was a poet, Thomas Trevelyan, 1650, who possessed the faculty of remembering back into the womb and beyond. He actually experienced life in the womb. And was able to describe it. He describes his experience in the embryo. Before I skilled to prize these living orbs, my eyes, before my sinews did my limbs conjoin, I was within a house I knew not, newly clothed with skin. Do you get it? He's inside the embryo. Then, while I'm in the embryo, then was my soul my only all to me. A living, endless sky. No, a living, endless eye, scarce bounded with the sky, whose power and act and essence was to see. I was an endless sphere of sight, or an interminable orb of light, greater than that which makes the days, a vital sun that spread abroad its rays, all life, all sense, a naked, simple, pure intelligence, without restriction. Then did I behold the true ideas of all things. Now, ask that. This is the importance of poets. They have faculties that most of us haven't got. If one man can see it, then it applies to all of us who can't see it. That he could really see that his real self was the totality of humanity as one immense being. And note then, without restriction, then could I behold the true ideas of all things. Now we come to a tremendous picture, if you take this. Will you concede first? Don't want, I may mention the word God. It's rather difficult to keep him out. I'm not talking conventional religious stuff or any particular dogma or doctrine. I say that because you may all have your own different beliefs. All the different beliefs are facets of the one great vision, if you can get it. The great picture, I'm going to start this sentence again. In our materialistic age, the basic tendency is to assume that Earth, of course, is real. Well, I can see it's real, it's solid. I'm solid and real. But I'm able to think, and there may be soul somewhere. And it's possible there's a higher world, but we can't see it. But obviously the first thing is solid matter. Reverse the picture entirely. I repeat, don't believe this, but try to come with it as a thought. And if you like it, live with it as a thought. First comes the divine idea. What you mean by God is the miraculous first cause, the source. It's a name for that which our limited consciousness cannot truly apprehend. there is a wonderful source from which pours out the ocean of living ideas, which are thoughts of God. Curiously, this is quite clearly said in the beginning of Genesis. Chapter 1 says that God made the plants after their kind, the fishes after their kind, the animals all after their kind, the birds after their kind, the trees after their kind, and then man he made after his own image, male, female. And then, 3 verses later, it says, but there weren't any plants on earth because it hadn't rained. So he has a second creation in the first verses of chapter 2, and he makes the plants, and the birds, and the fishes, and the animals, and the trees, and Adam. And then he hauls Eve out of the 5th rib. Why are there 2 creations? The first one is that he conceives the archetypal idea of a plant, the archetypal idea of a tree, or a bird, or different birds, or fishes, or animals. Idea of man. Male, female created he them. Long before anything is yet made physical, it first comes as an idea in the mind of God. Now, will you conceive this, that these ideas are really alive? They're really beings. They're really angels. Angels are the ideas of God. And yet they're really part of him, and they inevitably just, their sole delight is to obey him. But we're concerned now specifically with the idea behind each thing. As yet, nothing was visible on earth, as he puts it, because it had not yet rained. You can see this, that there's the wonderful process of planting these creative ideas into earth, so that trees, animals, plants, and all the rest appear, the whole of nature. And in it, one organ which is capable of thinking these God thoughts again. They are simply the thoughts of God. Ideas so alive that they can sheathe themselves in protective garments and move into planetary levels. Can you get that idea? They are the first thing. And then the miraculous thing that happens is the ideas of each of these things are translated down and manifested in the physical. And as I say, he creates an organ upon earth carrying conscious thought, which is capable of reflecting the ideas again. In other words, you and I can really think the ideas and can learn. Oh, and this is so thrilling, but I haven't got time. There's so many things that divert now. It gives us a totally different approach to looking at nature, not ordinary nature study or intellectually naming the flowers or knowing all the trees, but the ability so to look into the growth of flowers or trees or the rotting down into earth, that something in your mind can apprehend the invisible living idea that is working within the plant. a realization with this, the wonder of decay. It's much more powerful if I had a decaying log here. It might mess up your nice carpet, but it would help for the argument. Will you imagine a decaying log? It was once a noble tree with the sap rising, strong and hard wood, turned into fine wood like this. But it's now decay has set in. And that log is rapidly disintegrating. Millions of little creatures are all eating it, and it's now spread out and is becoming humus, into which you can then the seed. Try to get this big thought. The earth creates nothing. The earth breaks down form. Earth is a living creature. Everything is alive. Take that idea. Everything is all one in a complexity. But the processes of the earth are to break down nature and bring it all back to humus, which is the living soil, into which you can drop a seed. Had I a seed here to meditate upon? We're only imagining. If you're really meditating, if you really got the seed and are meditating on it, you are in your thinking making touch with an absolutely living being. The being of the daffodil or whatever it is that uses the seed. The seed does not contain the whole oak tree or daffodil. The seed, as you get it first, is matter chaoticized, returned to total formlessness. The value of that is that seed, let us say it's a wheat seed. Wheat seeds have been found in Egyptian tombs and planted. The right condition of warmth and moisture, and they will still sprout. Now, the whole wheat or the whole oak tree and the acorn is not contained in the seed. The seed is the point of matter chaoticized, turned back to chaos, total formlessness, and therefore it's a living point into which the idea of daffodil or oak tree or whatever can then pour, and therefore dropped in humus, the wonderful process begins and the huge oak tree grows. And that form of meditation into it is getting you in touch with the living thing. Now, nowadays, these things are so cleverly made. These are real, but they make things that artificially made that look just right. A lot to be said for that, because you can make it like this. But if that were simply made of stuff, you could think about it, but you couldn't really meditate into it. But by really thinking into the living plant and see what is happening, it spreads its leaves, and then the wonder happens. Now, see if you can take this. The wonder happens in the plant that the forces of the plant, of nature, metamorphose green petal into living flower. It goes through a metamorphosis. Everything is the leaf refined in its shape. Take a whole plant to bits and lay the leaves in an order. You see that something is working through to the most splendid form of leaf, and then it sort of fades, and then it collects up into these bracts here. In this one, you can even see that this big, splendid great leaf, it's gone and reduced down to that. And that's reduced to that. And that's reduced to this tiny one. A little fellow there. And then it metamorphoses into the green bract. And then the miracle happens, and that live, fleshy green literally metamorphoses into color, into the refinement of scent and color of the flower. And in a true sense, can you realize that it has lifted up into a realm of free color? Can you get this thought? Difficult thought now. Everything is frequency rate from, this is the real meaning of Jacob's ladder, which is carved on the front of your abbey, with the angels climbing up and down. Jacob's ladder represents the frequencies from the lowest, heaviest, slowest vibratory rate of heavy rock, cold and frozen, up and up into the refinement of plant, softness and that sort of thing, higher and higher frequencies, and up to the point of a refinement of matter into scent. Really the plant, the colored plant that's burst into rose or any other, is tapping up into a wonderful realm of high vibration and spiritual scent and color, totally invisible to our eyes, which are only tuned to physical matter. But the mystery is that it's all everywhere. One inevitably makes the gesture up and up and up and up, but it's really in and in and in and in, or the upness is everywhere. And therefore this room is filled with the high frequencies, which are beyond, far beyond our senses. And these flowers, if you once get this process, you realize this, that this is touched up into a higher frequency. Give me that, thank you. It's touched up into a higher frequency and broken through and demonstrated to us the reality of a world of frequency, vibration, far higher than our ordinary eyes can see, our senses can see. But your mind can see it. It's a realm of thought, and you are a thinking being, so that you can see the super-sensible, beyond the sensible, beyond what the senses can see. The mind can conceive the living idea that has manifested itself. And every plant is doing the same process, expanding into leaf, contracting, expanding into flower, contracting ultimately, expanding again into fruit, contracting ultimately into seed, which is once more matter returned to chaos, to total formlessness, which can be then planted in the soil, and up will come the plant once more. Well, that little diversion into nature study does suggest that there's something other than merely saying the name of that plant. I don't need to know. I don't know the name of it, and it doesn't matter. That's a purely intellectual thing. But I touched on the much more exciting thing that my consciousness has blended in a higher imagination with the living being that is manifesting in that plant. And humanity can begin to explore in that sort of way. Now,